Heya Cryptozens, tonight's show, Treasury reports and the White House framework. It's 10 p.m. Pacific time. The date is September 16th, 2022. Welcome back to the Crypto Overnighter. My name is Nicodemus, and I'll be your host. The cover model, mascot, and co-host for this podcast is Tex, and together we take a nightly look at the crypto, NFT, and metaverse space and the industry that surrounds it. If you have any questions or any comments on the show, come find us on Twitter or email us at nick@cryptoovernighter.com. And keep in mind, nothing in this show should ever be considered financial advice. When President Joe Biden issued Executive Order 14067, that meant more than a dozen reports had to be written and delivered. The order was called Ensuring Responsible Development of Digital Assets, and it ordered federal agencies to take a look at different facets of the crypto space as well as issues in the cryptocurrency ecosystem. They were also ordered to provide recommendations on how the U.S. can stay competitive globally in the digital asset sector. And finally, to work up a strategy to address any monetary instability or potential consumer protection risks. In all, 21 reports were ordered. Now, some of these reports have already been released. The Treasury Department released one last July. They released something of a framework of how international crypto regulations could work. It was a fact sheet that described how Treasury could work with foreign regulators on how to address the cryptocurrency industry. And then one came from Justice. Released last June, the Justice Department said that the U.S. should share more information about crimes tied to cryptocurrency. Share that information out and build overseas partnerships to combat these kinds of crimes. Attorney General Merrick Garland included a letter within that report by the Justice Department. Garland said that his agency is pressing for, quote, expanding our operational and capacity building efforts with international partners, increasing information sharing, coordination, and deconfliction, and closing regulatory gaps across jurisdictions. And then one came from the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. Released just this month, it calls for the U.S. to conduct further testing on the energy impact of crypto mining with an eye on setting standards for the mining industry. And that brings us today. Treasury released 3 new reports. In addition, the White House issued its, quote, first ever framework for responsible development of digital assets. And frankly, these additional reports were well timed. The industry has been waiting for guidance in the crypto sector, and it is hoped that the executive order would produce that guidance. So, let's take a look at the first major government policy dump since the merge. And before we go too far, let's talk about what this is. President Biden issued an executive order to find out a number of things about the crypto space. Everything from protecting the consumer to protecting the planet. So now, most of the documents have been released. Let's take a look and see what's actually in the response and what that tells us about those who are advising the president. That said, if you were hoping for some deep insight into what the Biden administration plans to do, which way the regulators want to go, you're going to be disappointed. It offers a murky view at best. And for the most part, the Treasury Department seems to be advocating that the government continue looking into the risks that crypto provides, that they remain prepared with enforcement actions to serve as a response to violations, and that they should keep looking into a CDBC. That's the 3 bullet points you can take from what was released by Treasury today. At the time of writing, the global crypto market cap is $958 billion. That's down 0.11%. The top 5 cryptos by market cap are Bitcoin up 0.11%, Ethereum down 2.88%, so that's continuing to dump post-merge, Tether, USDC, and Binance Coin up 1.48%. So one of the reports that Treasury released is called Crypto Assets Implications for Consumers, Investors, and Businesses. And I don't think they like cryptocurrency all that much. They're pretty combative right from the beginning. Quote, the potential for blockchain technology to transfer the provision of financial services as espoused by developers and proponents has yet to materialize. So about half of that report is dedicated to a descriptive survey of crypto assets. Once they've got that out of the way, then they start on the risks presented to users. So they have three categories for these risks. One category is what they're calling conduct risks. That's risks from practices within the ecosystem. Cryptocurrency fraud is an example. And then there's operational risks. And with that, they include, quote, deficiencies in information systems or internal processes, human errors, governance and management failures, or disruptions from external events. And finally, are crypto asset intermediation risks. Now, these are the same risks that investors face in traditional markets, things like volatility and custody issues. Yet, they say that it forms a, quote, unique landscape when crypto gets involved. And then there's another section in there that talks about the risks and opportunities that crypto presents for vulnerable populations. They included a great deal of data on that section. So, in this report, they make three recommendations: vigilant monitoring, as well as sharing with other agencies. Agencies should produce more guidance and rules, and greater educational outreach. And then there's the action plan to address illicit financing risks of digital assets, one that takes a look at risks from a national security perspective. It identifies 7 key actions to take. Most of it is centered around monitoring, as well as enforcement actions at home and abroad. Another report is, quote, the future of money and payments. This is all about the payment systems, so systems that are already in use by the Federal Reserve or by the clearinghouse. Now, part of this is going to be the FedNow system, and we talked about this one recently. It's an instant payment system that's supposed to begin operating next year in 2023. It's not blockchain, it's actually pretty agnostic. And it was brought up in the section called Recent Innovations in Money and Payments. In that same section, they also talk about stablecoins. They don't really spend a lot of time on stablecoins other than a brief discussion on the potential problems with reliability, as well as concerns over money laundering and the financing of terrorism. Then they finish that topic off by saying, quote, financial institutions that deal in stablecoins are subject to AML-CFT obligations. However, if a stablecoin was widely adopted globally as a means of payment, the stablecoin could pose greater risks for illicit finance due to uneven implementation of global AML-CFT standards for digital assets. Now, as you might guess, they spend a lot of time talking about digital currencies, specifically central bank digital currencies. They talk about stuff like paying interest on a CDBC. They talk about the cost of running a CDBC and public-private partnerships. But most of the time they spent talking about risks. One of those risks, and the one I'm most concerned about, is privacy. They said, quote, while physical cash can enable anonymous transactions, a CDBC could potentially be used at much greater scale and velocity. Therefore, anonymity in a CDBC system could present greater expanded money laundering, proliferation financing, and terrorist financing risks compared to physical cash. A CDBC could also offer valuable new opportunities for improved supervision and AML-CFT compliance. And so this report strongly recommends continuing CDBC research. Quote, in case one is determined to be in the national interest. So I anticipate that Treasury will continue to advance the idea of a digital dollar in some form, even though there's been no clear direction that they should do so from the White House or Congress as yet. They also suggest instant payment technology be implemented to improve the payment landscape. The global NFT market cap is up 20.65%. Sales volume is down 3.48%. According to CoinMarketCap, the top 5 NFT collections by sales volume are Anybody's Tay Keith, followed by Mutant Apes, Bored Apes, Other Deed, and CryptoPunks. Now keep in mind, some of these collections have very volatile prices, so do your own research. In response to these reports, federal agencies put together something of a fact sheet. It contains principal directions for crypto regulation in the United States, and it tries to work as a summary of the 9 reports to, quote, articulate a clear framework for responsible digital asset development and pave the way for further action at home and abroad. Now, in that sheet, there are 7 sections: protecting consumers, investors, and businesses, promoting access to safe, affordable financial services, fostering financial stability, advancing responsible innovation, reinforcing our global financial leadership and competitiveness, fighting illicit finance, and exploring a U.S. central bank digital currency. Now, some of this isn't new. Instead, they take the time to tout the principles and policies of the current administration. As an example, the report urges regulators, specifically the Securities Exchange Commission and the Commodity Future Trading Commission, to, quote, aggressively pursue investigations and enforcement actions against unlawful practices in the digital assets space. Which sounds great, but it doesn't actually say all that much. There's really nothing in there to help regulators figure out who's responsible for what in terms of regulatory duties. That's part of the problem that we have today. They recommend creating a framework for non-bank payment providers. They want to encourage the adoption of FedNow and instant payment systems like that. Now, remember the Office of Science and Technology Policy? They're the ones that wrote that scathing report on crypto mining. Well, they're still going to go after the climate impacts of crypto mining. They're going to develop something called a Digital Assets Research and Development Agenda, and it's expected to help mitigate the worst of the negative climate impacts. There's a section on strategy that talks about making changes to the Bank Secrecy Act, as well as applying the laws against unlicensed money transmitting. Specifically, those would apply to digital asset service providers. That's including exchanges and NFT platforms. And while the White House's response also talked about CBDCs, it looks like Biden's administration has already worked up policy objectives regarding a U.S. CBDC. That said, that the technical requirements still need some work. However, it's looking like Treasury is going to end up leading a working group that would include the Federal Reserve, the National Economic Council, and the National Security Council, as well as the Office of Science and Technology Policy. Now, speaking of the National Economic Council, Brian Deese is the director, and he said that cryptocurrencies could prove to be a danger to both financial stability and national security. Quote, regulation of cryptocurrencies is needed if digital assets are going to play a role that we believe they can in fostering innovation and supporting our economic and technological competitiveness. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen also weighed in on the need for regulation. She said, quote, innovation is one of the hallmarks of a vibrant financial system and economy. But, as we've painfully learned from history, innovation without adequate regulation can result in significant disruptions and harm to the financial system and individuals. Critics, however, took the reports to task, saying that they unduly focused on environmental concerns, that they were putting energy consumption ahead of the benefits. Kristen Smith is the executive director of the Blockchain Association. She said, quote, today's reports and summaries from the Biden administration's executive order on digital assets are a missed opportunity to cement U.S. crypto leadership. While intended to be part of a broader government and stakeholder effort to bring better regulation to crypto assets, these reports focus on risks, not opportunities, and omit substantive recommendations on how the United States can promote its burgeoning crypto industry. Now, next up is a report from the Financial Stability Oversight Council. They're expected to publish their report in October. This one's supposed to be about the financial stability risks of digital assets. Now, as far as these reports and the White House response goes, I'm disappointed. I was hoping for a great deal more clarity after waiting all this time. So, what do? They come out with these vague reports, unnecessary attacks on the industry, and the very dubious recommendation of continuing research into a U.S. CDBC. Frankly, you lost me at CDBC. And that is going to bring our Friday night to a close. I want to thank you, my listeners, because when you stop listening, I will stop talking. Take care of yourselves, but take care of each other too. We'll see you tomorrow night.